Hello everybody, welcome back to Starry Interviews with me, Joey, the Starry-Eyed Witch, and today I have a returning customer, a returning interviewee, which is super exciting. It's the wonderful Annwyn Avalon. Annwyn Avalon, am I saying that right? It's been a long day again. I keep doing these in the evening and then I'm like, yes, you keep doing these in your evening when your brain doesn't work, it's great. But welcome back to the channel and congratulations on your new book.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you for having me.
So I think that's a really lovely place to start. Why don't you tell us all about your new book for anybody who doesn't know about it yet?
Yeah, sure. Okay. Well, I actually have a copy of it right here. So it is The Way of the Water Priestess, Entering the World of Water Magic. I almost said the name of the other one. So my other book is Water Witchcraft, Magic and Lore from the Celtic Tradition, but this one is The Way of the Water Priestess. And it is very, very, very different than water witchcraft. But at the same time, it works and pairs really well with it. When I originally wrote Water Witchcraft, I turned in like 30,000 more words than I was supposed to. I didn't know that I'd get in trouble for overachieving. It was my first book. I didn't know what I was doing, but they were like, you have to take half of it out. Like you just have to. So I took a lot of the ritual and a lot of the stuff that focused more on priestess work out. And then that is how this one got its own little volume. And so where water witchcraft focuses a lot on witchcraft and folk practices, this one focuses, the historical side of it actually looks at sacred women or sacred people that worked with water in some capacity in a sacred way. And this was harder to research and document than the folk knowledge that we find in water witchcraft, because there isn't a lot of ancient texts that tell us what the water priestess were doing. And there isn't long information about what was happening at this temple or these different things. So I had to look into archaeological records, and I had to look into mythology and history and archaeology and all these different things. And the lineage of this water practice is there. It's just broken. And it's not like a single lineage. Let me clarify there. When I say lineage, I don't necessarily mean like what we think of in witchcraft, where some person initiated a person who initiated a person, and now they have this lineage.
Mm-hmm.
This is more looking at the practice of working with water in a sacred capacity. And that's what I mean by lineage.
Mm-hmm.
So these practices, it's almost as if I can see the puzzle, the entire completed puzzle. Like I feel like the water spirits really kind of gave me this, this visual of this is what it is. And I had to go back and then find the right puzzle pieces that fit in the right places, and enough of them to be able to tie them together, and say, okay, like we can see that this practice was here. Like for instance, I learned a lot about Delphi, and the Oracle of Delphi. I've always been really interested in the Muses and the Pythia and even Apollo's temples, and this idea of a solar deity associated with oracular work or sacred springs. And as I was doing research and going deeper and deeper, I found out that the oracles would actually bathe in a sacred spring before giving their prophecies. And then I stumbled upon fascinating research that a group is doing, where they are mapping constellations, with the rising and setting of constellations with the different orientations of temples. And one of the things that they found is the temple, the Oracle of Delphi, the temple at Delphi, is actually aligned with the rising of the constellation Delphinius, which it never occurred to me that Delphi and Delphinius, that it was named, Delphi is named for a dolphin and this constellation. And they found another temple to Apollo that is aligned with the setting of that constellation. So clearly there is like really great nuggets of information, but gosh, I wish I could just read a text that says, yes, they did orient the temple this way, and this is how it was done, and this is why it was done. You know,
that's like me and when I go searching for Celtic stuff, and you're like, right, the treasure hunt begins, because you can't find your information in one place, and you do go down these really weird rabbit holes, and you end up in really strange places.
Right, and sometimes you have to look at a practice from another culture to fill in the blanks, where you're like, okay, I have A, B, and D, and this one has B, C, and D. So I think I can like probably work it out here. And so that's where the rest of the book then comes in, is taking these water practices and all of these correspondences and nuggets of information and putting that into a working practice. But then it's also really hard to write a book and say, here is the working practice, because that is not going to work for everybody all the time. So I wanted to write this book in a way that was not path specific, like Water Witchcraft was. Like, that was very, very specific to water. Just pausing so you can cut that out.
Yeah.
To water. So what was I going to say? Water and the Celts, where this, it definitely has that research, but the practice can be adapted. And so perhaps you don't follow a Celtic path and you still really want to incorporate water into your practice, or be a water witch or priestess or practitioner, then everything can be adapted. So that was kind of the idea with this, is like, give a framework for other people to then be able to say, okay, here's my base. Now I can build on that. I got a funny negative review on Amazon because the person was really upset that I didn't write about other cultures. I didn't write about the water priestesses in India, and I didn't write about African water priestesses. And so she was like, very, it excludes other cultures. But I can't write about those things. I mean, I can research them, but I can't write about them from my own perspective, because I don't practice that way or in a similar way. And I really, really hope that my book, Water Priestess, inspires perhaps somebody of a different path, that perhaps walks more of a Hindu path, to write, the Hindu water priestess, or whatever version of that is, because this is just a starting point. And I really hope that it inspires other people to practice and bring their own practices in, and perhaps write books then for others. So
that's interesting, because I find we talked about this a bit last time. I find the whole water priestess thing fascinating, because we, of course, are bodies of water walking around. And so there is that, of course, it's going to be personal and reflect back at us our own idiosyncrasies, our own personalities, our own roots, and where we've come from. So that to me doesn't surprise me. I don't know about how you see, to me, if you had written the other bits in there, that would have been more indicative of like attracting negativity, because then that would be speaking for other cultures way outside of our own experience, which is a problem for most people. It's like, well, that's something we're trying to avoid doing, not, encourage us to do it, because that seems strange. It's Brigid in it. Is Brigid and her water maidens of the wells in it? I haven't read it yet. It's on my pile over there.
So yes, a little bit. Not as much as I wanted. Originally, there was going to be a huge section on goddesses, water goddesses. But again, too many.
Is that another book? Should I be quiet?
So there is mention, but not probably what you're looking for. Is a little
that's another book. I can tell. I shall be quiet now and leave that for the future. I love the for anybody who's wondering what on earth I'm talking about, I love the mythos of the goddess Brigid and the healing wells around Britain. I love that. So if anyone's interested, you can go find out, or you can wait for Annwyn's next book.
Have you been to the White Spring in Glastonbury? Okay, so you have experienced her water shrine. I mean, the stuff that's in Ireland is amazing. I've never been to Ireland, but I've been to England many, many times. I think we talked about this before. My mother.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, so I've been many, many times, never to Ireland, but I went to Glastonbury in 2012 and 18, specifically like with blinders on, like I will go to the White Spring or Chalice Well, right? In 2012, it was the Chalice Well first, and then I kind of like found the White Spring, and it is the, like, you can't even describe it, but when I say like the first time that you step foot inside the door and you look around and you realize like this is a working pagan temple, and there's water just on the floor and it's candlelit, it just took my breath away, like just like And I remember back in 2018, I went on pilgrimage with the Sisterhood of Avalon. So we actually had a private ritual time in there, and I spent a lot of it at Brigid's shrine. But that amazing picture of her, that painting, it almost comes alive. It's just such a fascinating place, and I love that she has such a strong presence there.
It's funny because right behind me, I've just got a new batch of the Chalice well water from I got that when I went on my last priestess training, so it's sat right behind me, and I was just like, oh, there you go, everybody, Chalice well water. It feels so good. I love it so much.
I love how I can, even on the video, I can see the rim of the just the bottom sediment, just having that little bit of an iron color to it. I love that so much.
Yeah, I love the well water. It always makes me feel better.
Have you been to Bath? Have you been? Okay, and have you gone to like in the temple and the temple ruins?
We did. When did we go? Was it? It must have been nearly 2 years ago. Like, time is after the pandemic, so it must be nearly 2 years ago, 3 years ago. But yes, we went.
Yeah, I really think that Sulis, so I went as a tourist. I think I was 5 years old, 5 or 6 the very first time I went, and then several times over and over and over through my life. But I really truly think that it was Sulis that brought me to this path. I say often like the water spirits, and there's others that I can identify as well, but Sulis was a constant. And I remember when I first discovered like magic and witchcraft, and that there were water goddesses, how I was like, oh my gosh, I have like a pendant from this temple, and like thinking back to like my childhood souvenirs and how like, holy crap, like these are things that I just picked up and saved because they had meaning. But like now I see that they're like, that meaning is like so deep. And I love the fact that her temple is still standing, and I have theories about how she is still active and present. So we know that the Anglo-Saxons, of course, were there. One of the kings, I think, was crowned in that particular area. And Crossbath is where the Celts originally worshipped Sulis before the Romans. And now that's turned into this like bath, like pooled bath type of thing that you can go and rent for an hour, do ritual in. And then there is that beautiful cathedral or chapel or church, and it's right there, like, you know, the entrance to Bath is here, and that it stands right there. And I love the fact that there's a huge statue of this woman pouring water, right? And I'm like, of course that is Sulis. Like, you can go to the Christian church all day long, but when you erect a church on the sacred grounds of a goddess, sorry, it belongs to her.
It's really funny because I've just been talking about Andraste, which is slightly outside of the realm of what we're talking about here. So I'm talking about her for spring equinox on this will come out later. This will come out after spring equinox, but we are just teetering on the edge of spring equinox as I record this. And it's funny because all of that is very much about how she's been sort of pushed under the rug by the advent of Christianity. And I was like, no, we're reclaiming her, da, 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 da. And it started with Easter and Istara and looking at why that was introduced, and then realizing all these tantalizing links. And it feels like that for goddesses like Sulis as well. Now, Brigid is obviously the one that I was having none of it. they couldn't get rid of Brigid at all. And everyone in England probably pretty much knows who Brigid is in one form or another, and probably across the United Kingdom actually. And it is really, really fascinating to see the way that these goddess energies do endure, and the ways in which they do, and then the ways in which some of them are coming back. Because I feel like Andraste is coming back.
Right. Well, that's how I feel with Sulis, because the temple ruins are, it's a museum. People pay to go in there, but it's still done in this way that, at least for me, I was like, don't care if I have to pay the person at the door. This is still a working temple. And then with Thermae Spa, they basically went down to the aquifers or somewhere down in the pipes and re-pumped that water away from the ruins where there's that like weird bacteria into this modern day spa. And what did they do? They have like huge mosaics of Sulis's head in the steam room and all of these different things. And I mean, even during like the Regency era, when we read these classic books, right? I think it's Persuasion, I believe, where they all go to Bath to take the waters. So even during that period, there was still this idea that like you would go to immerse yourself or drink these waters to heal. And so sure, they maybe took the goddess or the spirit out of the lingo, the verbiage of it, but still there, still powerful, still these places of healing. Today, you know, Regency era, antiquity, Roman era, the whole thing. And so, yeah, I feel like they never really went away. Like, I think a lot of them were renamed. That happened with like all of the sacred wells across, I mean, not just Europe, but it even happened like here in Arizona. They have a well, the sacred well, sacred spring well, and it supposedly is called Montezuma's well. But the thing is Montezuma never went there, not even close. And when the actual place was active, it was hundreds of years before. And it's really fascinating because it's actually connected with the plumed serpent or Quetzalcoatl, or these, they call them the angels, or like this green seraphim. And so it's like, that's a spirit in the well. But it's not, you know, Quetzalcoatl's well or the name of said deity in the native tongue. It's Montezuma, the guy who came and conquered everything and really never was there anyways. And that's kind of what happens in the UK and in all of Europe, where the well was named for the fairy maiden or the well spirit, and then Christianity came along and boom, all of a sudden it's St. Mary's well or St. Peter's well. And I like to kind of explain it this way. My name is Annwyn, but if you decided today that you were just going to call me Sharon, I probably would be irritated about it. But after a while, especially if I saw you on a regular basis and you're like, what's up, Sharon? Like, eventually I would know that that is what your name is for me. Nothing about me has changed at all. Maybe a little bit extra patience because I'm like, okay, fine.
Slightly more irritable, yeah.
Right, like slightly more irritable, yes. So, but nothing about the spirit changes. So they can wells can be renamed from, you know, pagan goddess to Christian saint all day long, and I don't believe that they ever left. I just believe they were there. And after a while, I think they started answering to the different names. After they were less than slightly irritable.
I'm just going to throw this brick at you for a bit, and then I'll give up. And yeah. Oh, I like that though. I like that a lot. That, you know, that, and I think there is something in there about how pivotal that is, because is water. Like, the other gods and goddesses might have had a slightly more difficult time depending on what they were most associated with, but water is so pivotal to us, to life force, to sustaining of life and nature and us, that you can't get rid of it, can you? You can't get rid of all the wells. So
Right.
what are they going to do? They're going to rename them, but as you said, that doesn't necessarily take the power away, because they can just adapt and overcome. So I like that a lot.
There's, in The Mist of Avalon, the movie, the final scene of that particular movie where Morgan Le Fay goes to the convent, and it always, like, just I always had this moment when I would watch that scene, and she would say, you know, I can't remember the exact words, but something about how, like, the goddess never left, she
Yeah.
just was now renamed. And so I love the fact that she went from Avalon as a priestess of the goddess to an abbey where she was still the priestess of the goddess, just in a new form and a new guise or new name, and she was considered a nun and not a priestess. Now I know that that work is controversial because the author is less than desirable. They had been accused of some pretty terrible things, but that was before I had actually found those things out. I loved that movie so much, and that work. It's not something I revisit now, but that scene just really sticks with me, and I feel like whoever did the screenplay for that, right? Like, whoever was working on the filming of that must have had that moment of the muses being like, do it this way, because it's going to be so powerful for so many people to see, no, she didn't go away. The goddesses did not go away. They were just renamed. And I think that's so important. And I think that when we look at things like neo-paganism, like, yes, it's new paganism, but gosh, it really does pull back from these old practices, and we're just trying to knit them back together. And a lot of times I think that these spirits kind of help to guide us. I mean, when water witchcraft first came out, people would say, like, oh, like what gave you the idea for this, or how'd you write the book, or I don't know. Like, that was my result. Like, I don't know. Like, the water spirits made me do it. And
that should be on your gravestone at the end of this lifetime. Just, the water spirits made me do it.
oh my god, that would be so good. Oh my god, I think I'll put that. I want that so bad. But even with Water Priestess, I got the first box, like you get your box of books, and it's like, oh. And I remember, like, opening it and looking at it for the first time, and like thumbing through, and then being like, who wrote this? Like, I don't remember this part at all. And I had to go back and be like, did my editor, like, mess with me here? And I didn't know, like, and I just didn't catch it. No, it's in the original. It's just like, oh, I guess maybe that was channeled. And then the same thing with, like, the charge of the Water Priestess. Oh, that was some channeled, something that was channeled, but then I was terrified to put it into the book, because we have the charge of the goddess, we have the charge of the dark goddess, we have, I think there was a charge of the sea goddess that came around once, and many people have rewritten or been inspired by the original charge of the goddess. And so I was like, this could be controversial. People could decide they don't like it. But I remember, like, going to that page and being like, okay, like, I don't know what's going to happen with this. And I read it, and I just, like, burst into tears, and I was like, I can't even take credit for it. I'm so sure that this was divinely given. So, like, that's good news. So if somebody doesn't like it, I can just really say the water spirits made me do it.
That you need a t-shirt and, like, wristbands with it on now. Like, they made me do it. Like, yeah, no, that's them. I know exactly what you mean, though, because I channel poetry up all the time for gods and goddesses in particular, and some of and some of my work that's written is the same way, and you're like, how did this come from me? I mean, it's good, I like it, but like there's something where it's a little bit, it is you, but it's like you plus.
Yes, exactly. Like being the conduit is a real thing, and there's something to be said about oracular work and divine poetry and the muses and all of that kind of stuff, because yeah, there were so many things in this book that I was like, wow, they just really wanted that in there. Okay. All right.
Yeah. Absolutely. So just as we're approaching the end of our time, I thought maybe we'd just talk a little bit about how, if someone came to you and was like, how can I be a water priestess right now in the times that we're living in? How do I go about that? What kind of advice would you give to them?
Oh, this is a great question, and actually something that's been coming up a little bit. I've had a lot of people ask me, like, can I call myself a water priestess? Like, when do I even know if I can do that? Do I have to be initiated to be a water priestess? And so the shorter answer is, I think my personal belief is, initiation can get you there, spirit initiation can get you there, but both of those don't define you as a water priestess. What really defines us is the actual practice, actually doing it. So even if you're not comfortable calling yourself a priestess, what you can do is say, I'm a priestess in training, or I'm a practitioner, or I'm walking the priestess path. We actually had this question this last week in my Facebook group. And that's what I was saying, like, you can be a water priestess in training, or you can walk the path of the water priestess without having to be like, oh, I am one. But the point is that it's the practice. So are you, like, is your practice focused around water? Do you work with or in servitude to a deity or spirit or body of water? Do you do things in the physical world, like beach cleanups or lectures, or we've got World Water Day coming up, and there's tons of different forms of activism. Are you an activist? Because that can be seen as water priestess work as well, especially since our water source is so polluted and in danger. And so I think that fighting for water rights, fighting for clean water in whatever capacity, if that's behind your altar because you maybe have mobility issues and you're just at home working at your altar for magical environmentalism or an activism, or are you going out to the beach? Are you organizing things? But it can also take on a whole other side of it, where do you use water to heal? I actually have an interview series that I do on the Water Witch blog that's called An Interview with a Water Priestess, where I interview, it's usually a written interview, different people that work with water in a esoteric way. And so I have this lady coming up in a couple of months, and she's really fascinating, but she's not an activist, and she doesn't really do magic or witchcraft the way that we do, but she actually has natural bodies of water. So her ancestral homeland, she has a natural body of water, and she takes people there or other locations because she travels, and she puts, the floaties that the little kids have for the pool. You get a whole bunch of floaties on your arms and legs, and then you lay in the water, and she has singing bowls, and she does energetic vibrational healing by doing the singing bowls, by laying her hands on, by using water as the vehicle or the healing method, along with all these other things. So in my mind, she absolutely is a water priestess. She takes on a different side of it, which is working with water to heal. So even doing small things like first thing in the morning, getting a glass of water, blessing it before you drink it. That one, and before bed, taking a small dish of water and placing it by your head, charging it as a protection and having all of the negativity or bad dreams go into the water instead of into you. So it's almost like a trap. Like
I've got one over there. I've got that exact thing over by my bed. Well, mine's a jug, and I refresh mine.
Yeah, exactly. But this idea of waking up and putting sacred water in, and then before bed using it for protection, just simple things like that can really start you on a practice. You know, you don't have to organize a huge beach cleanup, but next time you go, take a bag. And if you see the trash, put the trash in the bag and throw it away. It doesn't have to be this grand thing. It really is a relationship between you and the water or water spirits. So, you know, setting up a water altar is also a really great place to start. And both books actually have information on that. Water Priestess, I took it into the shrine area versus Water Witchcraft, I took it more into an altar. But you can't exclude, you know, one from the other. And sometimes they're the same because you can have a shrine section on your working altar. But I talk about doing things like building shrines to a local body of water or a spirit. So if somebody's really interested in working with water in a magical, witchcraft, esoteric way, whether you know you're a priestess or priest or not, go and actually do a little research and find out what water is near you. Do you have a sacred spring? Are you close to the ocean? What about the river or the lake? And then actually taking trips and going to these places and meeting the local spirits, learning what kind of plants grow there, and taking on this idea of service and like service to the actual body of water and tending. So it's like an idea of going and not claiming and saying like, this is my body of water, but almost in that way, in a sacred way, saying like, I will guard this body of water.
Yes.
I will do magical work. I will pick up trash. If something bad ever happens, like an oil spill, I will get involved. I will keep an eye on the laws and the things that are happening. And I've had students and other witches do things like get on their local city council, so they get to be the voting body that makes the decisions for the local bodies of water. And I did an interview a couple of weeks ago with a lovely lady, and she was talking about how her spiritual group actually has like a lake that they meet at. And so we were talking about like, when you go, like, honor this place, honor this lake, see what you can do. And to take it one step further, this is, I'm just going to keep saying these until it happens, because I don't know how to do it. And I don't know if I have the capacity to do it. But here in the US, religious rights are very, very protected. So if we're water priestesses and water is our spirituality or our deity, and this particular body of water is near my house, and I go there on a regular basis and I tend it and I clean it and maybe even hold moon circles or these different things, establishing these bodies of water as churches. Because once that's done, any type of assault on it is an assault on religious freedoms. And so I'm not a lawyer. I don't know how we could do this, but I think it would be fascinating and really bring in this idea of an added protection, because water is more, I mean, we need it to drink, right? We need it to live. We need to have clean water to drink and to clean ourselves and all this kind of stuff. But it waters more than just our physical bodies. It waters our souls. And so when the water is all polluted and there's nothing left but fighting, you know, I know that I will have wished that I had done more. And I don't know if this could be done where we could say, no, this body of water is my church. You can't do anything to it. But I certainly would be interested to find out if that's something that could happen, and perhaps somebody will hear this one day and take that and run with it. But no matter what, I think that a big part of water priestess practices is this guardianship, the idea of well tending or ocean tending. The old well maidens in the stories, they guarded the wells, they gave water to thirsty travelers. And it was through the destruction of and the assault on these maidens that the land then fell into ruin. And we see this happening again here in our own society. The way that women or feminine people are treated is just absolutely terrible. And we reflect that into the land. And we, as a human species, destroy the land, just like in these old stories, the greedy knights destroyed these well maidens. And so we have to bring back the golden cup. We have to find a way in order to bring back the well maiden, to rise up again, and this time say, no, you cannot take.
I love you. just we're gonna have to end it there because it's great.
Sorry, I talked too much.
No, I love it. I love everything about it. Thank you so much for coming and chatting with me today. So the takeaway, guys, go guard the earth, go guard the bodies of water any way that you can. Embody that guardianship because we desperately need it before it's too late. And I was just quoting, I think it's the Cree, is it a prophecy? And it's like when the last tree has fallen and the rivers are poison and you cannot eat money.
Yeah.
Only then will you realize that you cannot eat money. I was quoting that this morning on the podcast for something aligned with this, not quite the same, but it's just all come round in that synchronicity. So
there's a musician, a singer named Aurora.
Yeah.
And she sung this, and it has been the soundtrack in the back of many of my spells for this kind of work, because it's so true. I mean, we can't eat money.
Yeah.
We can't drink it.
No. Money where our mouth is as well, everybody. That's something else to think about, but that's a whole other video and we'll be here for another hour if I get off on that. But I was ranting about that earlier, so I'm going to coach in. Thank you very much for joining me, and we're just going to close it out for everybody. All the links, as always, will be down below, and you can get both of Annwyn's books in all good publishing places as well right now.
Yes.
So thank you very much for joining me, and many blessings to you guys out there. And oh, if anyone out there would like me to interview anyone in particular, please let me know down in the comments section below.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.